is Sydney for those of you who don't know me, and today I'm going to be reviewing the book The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. If you don't know anything about this book, have you been living under a rock? It is a 1920s classic. It is a school read for most schools, most high schools that I know of. I don't really think middle schoolers read this. It is a wonderful read in my opinion. Even though I am a big reader, I am not a big fan of the classics oftentimes. The only two classics I like are this one and A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. But anyways, this book, if you have not read it, is about a man in the 1920s named Nick Carraway, and he is going about his life, and I think it talks vaguely, or maybe it's mentioned that he should write down his life. So that is why Nick is our narrator instead of the titular character Gatsby. Nick is the one observing Gatsby's life. So basically this story is set in the summer of 1922 in Long Island. It's mostly about the reinventing of Mr. J. Gatsby, who lives in West Egg in this huge mansion all by himself. This is right before the Great Depression, where the stock market crashes, and it is about Nick narrating the life of the inhabitants of Long Island, most specifically West Egg and East Egg. West Egg is the home of Nick Carraway and his next door neighbor Gatsby, and then over on East Egg, across the bay, is Daisy and Tom Buchanan. It's just about their life and mostly Gatsby's background and how it ties into the theme of the 1920s and the American dream overall. Honestly, it is a wonderful book. I really do encourage, if you are going to stay, please end up reading parts of it at least. It is just an amazing book. You learn so much from it, and I honestly think, like, look at this. It's so short. I don't see how anyone could not bear to read it, you know? But, you know, who am I talking? I read books for pleasure. Some of y'all don't. So that's all I'm really gonna say about it as of non-spoileries. So if you want to know more, go pick it up. Or if you haven't read it and you want to be spoiled, just go ahead and keep watching. Alright guys, so I had to take some serious notes while I was reading this book for school projects and assignments, and I'm writing a giant paper over it, but also just because I have bad reading comprehension, and that's just how I remember everything that goes on. Alright, so earlier when I was mentioning West Egg and East Egg, West Egg is Nick Carraway and Gatsby's area. Basically East Egg, where the Buchanans are, that represents old money, which means they've had their money for a long time in whatever business association they've been a part of, and then West Egg is more of the new money that has just sprouted up. The difference is that everyone in East Egg with old money has always been rich and they're just kind of low about it, whereas Gatsby primarily and all those in West Egg are flaunting their newfound wealth, which means they haven't had this wealth forever. They just came upon it. And yes, earlier when I was mentioning how Nick is the narrator and he's writing about his life, I thought it was interesting that we didn't really know much about Nick. The fact that, you know, we didn't understand if he was a reliable narrator or not, or if he was lying about everything, or if the point of view was biased, or anything like that. I thought that was particularly concerning but kind of interesting, because you're learning so much about the titular character, but you're not really learning that much about Nick. All you know is that he sells bonds and he moved from the Midwest. Why did he move from the Midwest to Long Island? Maybe I missed that part, but that was just one thing that concerned me. At the beginning it mentions how he is out of his house one night and he notices his neighbor at the end of his dock looking at the green light over across the water where East Egg is, and that is the infamous green light that he sees. When I first read that, I thought that Gatsby was hallucinating it, but then I remembered Nick is our narrator, which means he is seeing this green light too. So then I come to find out that this light is the light at the end of Daisy and Tom's dock. You know, I just thought that the light was weird. Every time you just hear about this orb of light, you're like, supernatural stuff? Implicit dream? I don't know. So the green light at the end of the dock is representing Gatsby's inner battle with whether or not to pursue the dream of going back after Daisy. He lost Daisy when he went to the war, and then she got engaged to Tom, who is an absolutely terrible person. I never liked him, and usually the dark characters have tragic backstories, maybe not redeeming qualities, but at least tragic backstories to get where they're coming from. But this guy was literally an ape. I just hated Tom. He was so overbearing and abusive and cruel and stuck up and arrogant, and I just couldn't handle him. Anyways, so as I was saying that this takes place in the 1920s, automobiles are becoming huge. And with automobiles comes the traffic light. So when Gatsby was looking at the green light, it kind of had a relation to the invention and innovation of the traffic light. And green in the traffic light means go, do it, go chase your dream. And also another thing, especially about the color, and I will get back to the connotation of colors in just a minute. The connotation of green that is most associated with is envy. You are green with envy. And this dream that Gatsby has is an envious one. He wants to pursue Daisy and get her back and be in love and marry her and take her away from Tom and go back to the way it was when he was a lieutenant in the war. But yes, the green light was a very pivotal thing. I thought that was really interesting how the author played into that, but didn't really tell us directly what it meant. We had to inference that for ourselves. All right, and back to the note of colors, as I was saying earlier, the thing that I noticed about colors was that any color that was specifically noted in the book oftentimes had a negative connotation, especially yellow. The yellow car, the yellow glasses of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, and like the yellow champagne glasses and everything like that. It made this impression in the beginning that it was very artificial and fake. It also reminded me of the Golden Age. Everything was covered in gold, but when you scratched beneath the surface, it was gross and nasty. And that also relates to the Valley of Ashes that is in between West Egg and East Egg. Every time you had to get to East Egg from West Egg, you had to drive through, and vice versa. And I personally think that when you had to drive through, you kind of got to see the ugliness inside of America at this time, and possibly see a visual future prediction of how ruined American society is about to be during the Depression and the stock market crash. But just like in the Gilded Age, there's so much beauty, but then you see the grit and the grime and the nastiness inside, and that's the true society right there. You can't ignore that. When you drive through the Valley of Ashes, you can't ignore it. You see ashes making the silhouette of buildings, and you see just dirt covering the faces and clouding the train windows when they pass by, or the trolley. It just feels so negative when you enter there, but that's what American society is at this time, because you have so many people who are so artificial, like West Egg, and underneath they're all just nasty and alone and jaded and gray, like the Valley of Ashes. Because at night everyone will drink their troubles away and talk to people they don't know and get in fights that won't matter the next day, and just go about life in this I have nothing to lose attitude. It's a very existential time in American society. That's immediately what I thought the Valley of Ashes was, even on like the first page of that second chapter when the Valley of Ashes was introduced. And speaking of the Valley of Ashes, in spirit of these little spectacles I have on here, let's hope that there's no glare coming from the lights. I don't think that it explicitly right there, then and done, mentioned what the spectacles and the billboard of the optometrist represented. I personally think that it was describing a god figure in the midst of this mortal wasteland that America had become. Even though spirits were high and everything was well and fine for the most part on the outside, not on the inside as we talked about, God is watching this country that was built on him just crumbling to the ground. It doesn't matter how jaded and dark and dismal this society can get. Even now, like present time, God is always here, and he's always watching, and he sees it all. He sees all the gunk and the reality of what this life has become. That is why I think the billboard was in the Valley of Ashes. That is what I think the billboard is. And another thing is that the glasses were gold or yellow, that dismal artificial color, but I also think that yellow represents death. Almost. There's just so much decay and death associated with the color, and the reason why the glasses are gold is because he's seeing all the grit and the death. He's like honing in on it. I don't know if I worded that correctly, but that's just what I think is going on there. Anyways, this book was mainly about J. Gatsby, also known as James Gats, reinventing himself and going after that dream of bringing Daisy Buchanan back to him, because that felt like the promise and the purpose of his life. That's the thing. Like, a human person is not the purpose of your life. A human person, though, can help you gear into the purpose for your life. Now I'm gonna try and get more, like, hit some of the summarizing points, but I'm gonna just bear with me. Alright, so as soon as we first met Daisy and Tom, I knew that Tom, the rat that he is, was having an affair. Like, it was just obvious. And I did this video where you kind of got to know me and I was dancing around like a loon. I'll leave that there if you really want to watch it. I mentioned how I hate cheating in books. It doesn't matter how good a book is. It doesn't matter if I wrote the book, because I have, but that's another story. I cannot stand cheating in books because there is no moral and ethical reason to cheat on someone. That's not okay. That's not okay in a relationship, whether it's dating or marriage or engagement. It's not cool, my dudes. And oh my gosh, when I met Tom, I was like, this guy were an actual character, like an actual living person. I would punch him. It just made me so upset that he functioned like that. I mean, dude. And you can see that she's like, that Daisy is so unhappy. It's just, oh my gosh, get her out of that situation. Speaking of Daisy, I thought she was drunk at the beginning. I thought she was just this raging alcoholic, even though we were in the Prohibition. Is that history right? But I think she's just so deluded and sad, and I wouldn't say nuts, I would say wounded. She's wounded right here. That she just can't take it. When Myrtle called during dinner, I wanted to just, dude, we get it. He's having an affair, but really, you gotta bring the woman into this. You gotta bring the home wrecker into the situation. Like, I knew we were gonna meet her, but like, really? During the dinner, this led to Daisy's quote about how girls should be fools. And yes, at the time, women didn't technically have a lot of rights. We were on the low rung of the social ladder. It's still a good quote because I don't think it's more about you should be clueless and out of the way in the gentleman's society. I just think that she's saying she would feel much better if she didn't know that Tom was cheating on her. If I were being cheated on, I would rather not know than know and live through it and not be able to get out of there. I would rather just be like, he doesn't appreciate me the way I want, rather than he doesn't appreciate me because he's sleeping with another woman and I am now comparing my self-worth. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? And I wish there was more of a role for the daughter. I wish that before Gatsby was killed, yep, you stayed for spoilers, he gets killed. I just wish that he would have tried to play maybe not an active role in her daughter's life, but just, I wish there was a scene where he could at least have tried to do something with the daughter. Like, try and talk about her mother. Maybe confess the truth to an infant who could never say it to anyone else because they won't remember and they can't even talk. Actually, she's not really an infant. She's like 3, right? She's a 3-year-old. She's a toddler. Anyways, I don't think that applies here, but I just hit a drawer. That was fun. Jordan and Nick's relationship, I didn't really understand. I didn't get the physics and the chemistry of that. I don't get physics and chemistry anyways, but like in the movie it made more sense. But in the book it was kind of hard. I did like that scene though with the whole drunk driving thing and the tire fell off after one of Gatsby's parties. Oh yeah, so he's talking about how she is a rotten driver. That is literally how it's described. And she's like, it takes 2 to make an accident. No, it takes 1, but okay. And she says, I hate careless people, that's why I like you. I like annotated the mess out of this book. And then Nick talks about how he is one of the few honest people that he knows, and that's like his good virtue. And that quote particularly, both of them, made me think 2 things. Number 1, what's Jordan's deal? I never really got a good grasp on who Jordan really was. I know she was this championship golfer and she was like the side character and Nick's romantic interest, but like I know there's like a reason she was in there, not just to provide more background and more plot lines, but I wish I could tell you that I got more out of her character, but I really didn't. And then it makes me think, was Nick even a reliable narrator? Because if he's honest, are we missing any details? Because he wrote this technically. This is his account of Gatsby's life, his life around Gatsby and all those people in Long Island and West Egg and East Egg. I don't know. We could be missing details because, you know, we might get screwed over like that, but oh well. Meyer Wolfsheim, I think is how you say his name. That whole weird underground club meeting thing at lunch was really weird. And the drive over there when Gatsby was talking about how he went to Oxford and it was like a family tradition, and then he was like, he went to Oxford, and I was like, in the book it had different spellings. Gatsby said Oxford, like with OX, but then Myra Wolfsheim said it with G's, like OGG. That just kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, was that a hint at like a lie or something? And that shady deal with the whole, no, this is my friend, this isn't the one that wants business with you. And that's when I started catching on. Gatsby has something shady going on the side. And then when Gatsby like asked Nick if he wanted to get in on like a side job he has, and that was just kind of awkward. And I was like, okay, true colors are being revealed. When we met Myrtle's husband, I was like, dude, do you not see just why are you having this weird, rough looking guy come to your place all the time? Do you not think it's because he's trying to cop your woman? I'm just gonna be straight. And you know, he's all gritty, and then she's kind of decked out. In the movie, they were in the Valley of Ashes, and the husband was covered in soot and dirt and grime and car stuff, and Myrtle was like dressed up. Her hair was done, her makeup was done, she was smoking a cigarette, she had heels on, you know, it kind of made her seem like she was more likely to be a part of the East Egg life than she was the Valley of Ashes life. That was just another thing that I caught. Oh, when we get the background on how Gatsby and Daisy knew each other and were in love with each other, I was just heartbroken because, oh my gosh, I love hate the so close so far parts in books, and how, you know, they might have married each other, they were so enamored with each other when they would talk to each other, and it was just so cute. And he went back to the war. Daisy was engaged to Tom, and the night before the wedding, Tom gave her these pearls, and she started pulling these pearls off of her and saying she changed her mind because she got a letter from Gatsby. And oh, the timing, I wanted to like sob with her. I was like, don't do it. Yes, there's cold feet at a wedding, but like if that was like her one true love and he was still alive getting this letter, I would have bolted. If I knew that I loved someone more than the person I was about to marry, and this person that I loved more than the person I'm about to marry is still alive, oh, I would have booted it out of there. I would have apologized profusely, but I would have booted it out of there. I was so sad when half an hour later they were like treating her as if she were sick, and then she was like, fine, and the pearls were back on, and I was just like, no. And then when she heard Gatsby's name for the first time again, I was just like, But their meeting, when Nick set up that whole thing at tea, that was pretty dang cute. The whole embarrassed. Gatsby walked out of the room, couldn't take it. He felt like a fool, but she was embarrassed too, so Nick left them alone for like half an hour. It's almost like the Discovery Channel when they like want the horses to like, you know, and they like leave them alone and turn the barn lights off. The scene with the shirts, when Gatsby was touring Daisy around his house and just throwing all of his extravagant, expensive shirt everywhere, and she just starts sobbing. I know that Daisy was not crying because she had never seen such fine shirts in her entire life. She was sad because she knew her mistakes. Daisy talks in a way that she means something else, but she's saying a different thing. Not opposite, but it like correlates with something deep down inside of her. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it made her seem kind of loopy, and then she starts the affair and it's just like, okay, I think we're going good, but we have like 100 pages left, so it's only gonna go down from here. When Daisy and Tom went to the party and she didn't like it, so Gatsby fired all of his servants and stopped throwing parties. Like, yeah, that's a good thing to do because you love her, but like also that seems a little aggressive. Obsessive, not aggressive. Aggressive is Tom. It was a little obsessive that he did all that because that was his lifestyle that he became a part of. And then we get the full background that Gatsby is not Jay Gatsby, but his name is James Gatz, and he was the son of poor farmers in Minnesota, and he wanted to make a different name for himself and be rich one day, and he started working for this guy named Dan Cody on his yacht, and when Dan died, he became a lieutenant in the war, in World War I. Not World War II, World War I. And he became an officer. And then while he was an officer, he met Daisy. And the thing about military people, because I fall into the trap too, you can't tell the social economic standings of a person when they have good manners and a uniform. You just see a man in uniform who is treating you really nice. I mean, that can't be not attractive. To see someone who's willing to fight for your country and be nice to you all the while. Yes! I don't know if he told her that he was poor. Even if he did, the fact that the way he treated Daisy so kindly and lovingly and just wonderfully and was so nice to her and loved her. When he went to the war, Daisy waited for him for years. Years. Actual years. And it was after the war that she got engaged to Tom. I'm hit right here because of that. Because she didn't wait for him because of his money. She waited for him because it was him. And I think that's where Daisy and Gatsby contrast, because Gatsby was really taking pride in himself because he could court and get a rich girl to fall in love with him even though he was poor. Meanwhile, Daisy fell in love with this guy's personality and not his money. You see where I'm going here? The confrontation when Gatsby is trying to get Daisy to say that she never loved Tom and he was going to confront Tom, that Daisy was going to leave him in the dust, which I would have been so happy with. I was ready for it. Like, boom, boy, out of there, get him out, yank him. Tom caught Gatsby in his organized crime of selling legal liquor during the Prohibition, for God's sake, and that's how he got his money. And it was all this just corrupt thing, and she breaks down and says that she didn't never love Tom. She did love Tom at one point. When we were talking about after they were married, Jordan described that she had never seen someone so mad about her husband. You can't just ignore that. But Tom all this while had him investigated because I'm pretty sure he knew about the affair, and it's just so frustrating because Daisy knew about the affair too, but she didn't do anything until, you know where I'm going with this, she hit Myrtle with Gatsby's car when they were going home. She killed Myrtle. I mean, that's the ultimate revenge right there, but like, that was a bad move. That was a really, really, really bad move. And at that moment, because she got killed by car, it made me think back to that scene after one of Gatsby's parties, the tire falling off and they're like, I can't push it and I'm not sober. It made me think back to that because Jordan had said it takes two to make an accident and I hope I never meet anyone careless. And in that moment, Daisy was extremely, extremely careless. She was upset. She was about to lose the love of her life. Everything had gone to hell, and just, it was a really poor move on her part, because I do think it was intentional. I don't think it was accidental. Because Daisy also earlier mentioned that she wishes that her little girl would just be a fool. And in that moment, Daisy was a fool. But I did think it was really noble of Gatsby to cover up for Daisy like that. Daisy went back and Nick found Gatsby and he was like, hey, Daisy was the one who hit Myrtle with the car, but I'm covering up for her. That way, you know, Tom wouldn't beat her to death probably because he's huge and terrible. I don't know, that just got me so mad. And I was like, I already know what's about to happen because I managed to avoid spoilers when I read this book. Hallelujah. But I was just so, I had this disgusting feeling like I knew that he was gonna die. I knew that he was gonna die, but I didn't know what was gonna happen. I figured that Tom was gonna kill him because Gatsby's car ran over his affairee, if that's the right word. But no, it was Mr. Wilson. It was Myrtle's husband that went to Tom to track down the owner of the yellow car, which brought about Gatsby's death, which reaffirms my yellow equals death and decay theory. And while Gatsby is floating in the pool, Mr. Wilson shoots him. And that's another thing I want to talk about. Gatsby mentioned earlier in the book that he had never made use of his pool. Did he know that he was gonna get shot? Did he know it was coming? Is that why he went to the pool? Like, I don't understand, because he had never used the pool before. Why was he gonna use it now? The hottest day of the year had passed because that was the confrontation date, but like, I thought that was kind of interesting. Did he know that it was coming? Did he know that covering up for Daisy was going to get him killed? And if he knew that, did he decide to go up to the pool so that he could be shot, so that he wouldn't have to live a life without Daisy? I've got so many questions swirling up here. And then the funeral came. No one came to it. No one came to his funeral. Not even Meyer Wolfsheim went to his funeral, but he did talk about how they got into business together, but his dad came with Nick to the funeral, and I thought that was really amazing. And he brought the self-improvement schedule that Gatsby had written for himself when he was a boy, when he was just James Gats. I just thought it was like really heartbreaking, but it was the closure we needed after his fate. He did have the right intentions, but he got too caught up in his dream of this girl. I think that Gatsby dies in part just because he is so obsessed with the past and he won't overcome losing. Ever since the beginning, he was like, I'm going to come out of this rut of being poor and a farmer, and I'm going to make a name for myself, and I'm going to make it big and make lots of money. He's so determined to get on top that he brings himself to the ultimate bottom. He wanted nothing more than to scale the social ladder, or the economic ladder, I should say. And when he was finally getting up, he found this girl, and this girl just threw everything into overdrive, and he just started striving for this dream by whatever means necessary, which led him to organized crime. You shouldn't have to get to a point where you have to go against the law for something you want, when it's just that simple, when it's just a woman. And I'm not lessening the importance of women. I'm just saying it's just a person. Emotions, you can literally just talk to them. You don't have to turn the world upside down for this person, because your presence turns the world upside down. When she was so embarrassed to be near him, it was because she was still in love with him, and all he did was stand in the parlor or the living room, hands in his pockets, and not knowing how to speak to her like a normal person again. That simple thing just turned Daisy's world upside down. He wouldn't have to buy a mansion or live this extravagant fake life to have Daisy or be with Daisy. Just even from the beginning, when she just knew him as a lieutenant with almost maybe even no money, she fell in love with his personality, and I don't think that he noticed that ever. I think that once he saw her married into the life that she had been growing up in, I think he figured that there was no way to sway her into the life that he previously lived in. The concept of the American dream is so profusely used in this novel, but I think that F. Scott Fitzgerald does a really good job of making it seem like the American dream is a lie, because he had to resort to what he did to achieve the American dream, and that dream, the American dream and the one to get Daisy, got him killed. It literally got him killed, because the American dream is like, you can become anything that you want to be, achieve any means and status and success that you are striving for. That is the American dream. You can bring yourself to the highest point and just have self-triumph. All the while, Gatsby had everything that a person would want at this time in life. And yet he was living alone, he was lonely, and all he wanted was this one person. Possessions and everything did not make a single difference to him. He only did that because he thought that it would make a difference to Daisy. And to be honest, it didn't. Hence why she was just sobbing over the shirts. The only thing that ever meant anything to Daisy was him. Not his mansion, not anything like that, not his car. It broke my heart that Gatsby was so in his head and over his head to understand that. Last thing I have to mention, and it won't take more than 5 seconds, is this. Freaking Nick breaking up with Jordan over the phone, that was a little unnecessary, don't you think? I mean, you could have at least showed up in person or written her a letter, but no, you had to do it over the phone. Anyways, that is it for my review on The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I would have to rate this book 4.55. I'm gonna give this 4.5. It was near perfect. I really appreciated this. This was such a fast read. The language was really interesting. That's another thing I wanted to mention, but it's just kind of like a side note. He had the best comparisons and descriptions of imagery ever. I've never seen a book describe characters and settings and dialogue the way that this author does. And I was so impressed. I was impressed with the characterization and the character development and the symbolism and all the literary devices that were utilized in this book. I overall just think that this was an amazing book, and I really encourage you go back and read this fully so you can better understand what the mess I was talking about. But that is all I have to say about this. If you liked this video, why don't you prove it and like it yourself? It would be great. If you want me to make any more book reviews on school-related reads or just any fictional, non-fictional reads in general, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because I will definitely do that. I thought this was really fun, and I think this will better prepare me individually, but also possibly others for exams or papers or anything like this that has to do with school. But also it just really helped my comprehension, and perhaps it helped yours. Maybe you even read the book and didn't understand it fully. So that is what I'm here for. I had so much fun making this video and discussing my feelings on this topic and this book as a whole. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.